Days Gone is a very polarizing game. Some see it as just another zombie survival, while others view it as an underrated gem that deserves more love. As you can probably tell from the title of this video, I am firmly in the latter category. That's why I am excited to take a deep dive into Days Gone to not only break down if it's a game worth playing, but also to explore why it didn't get the reception many hoped for. Days Gone was brought to life by Bend Studio. Bend Studio might not be a big name in gaming, but they have some history. Besides Days Gone, their major works include Bubsy 3D from 1996.
Now, what would a platform game be without platforms?
And the Siphon Filter series. Although Siphon Filter was relatively popular, the series is essentially dead. With the last release being a mediocre PSP exclusive from 2007. Since then, Bend Studio has carved a niche for itself, making spin-offs for other PlayStation franchises. They first made a generally favorable spin-off for Insomnia Games' Resistance series, called Resistance Retribution, which was also a PSP exclusive. And yes, those Insomniacs. Then they worked on two spin-offs for Naughty Dog's Uncharted series. First came the well-received Uncharted Golden Abyss for the PlayStation Vita, followed by this weird digital collectible card game, Uncharted Fight for Fortune. Don't ask me what happened here, I honestly have no idea what they were thinking with this one.
And Fight for Fortune is a successful effort in doing just that.
And then, nothing. Bend Studio went silent for the next 3 years. Eventually, we learned that after their success with Uncharted Golden Abyss and Resistance Retribution, Bend Studio wanted to create their own IP, instead of making spin-offs for others. They also wanted to explore a new genre, inspired by the popularity of zombie and survival horror games. They envisioned a game set in a vast open world with dynamic gameplay mechanics. Days Gone was finally unveiled at E3 2016. Not just announced, but properly showcased with a 10-minute gameplay demonstration. Despite the impressive presentation, the game wasn't even close to release. Although the initial plan was to come out in 2018, that didn't happen. Turns out, creating a seamless and immersive open world from scratch involved significant technical hurdles, especially with the varied weather and time of day systems. In the end, Days Gone was released 3 years after its initial showcase in April 2019. The reaction was a mixed bag. Despite 6 years of development, the game launched in a pretty poor state, rife with technical problems, including bugs and performance issues. Nevertheless, the game's core foundation resonated with players, so it topped sales charts in several regions upon release and sold over 1 million copies within its first months. Better yet, Bend Studio provided post-launch support for Days Gone, addressing many of the technical issues and even adding new content through patches and updates. This significantly improved the overall reception, and over time, the game garnered a more positive response from players. But for many, it was already too little, too late. 2 years after its initial release, Days Gone was ported to the PC platform. In my opinion, this is the definitive version of the game, and it's the one I played for this video. At its core, the world of Days Gone is pretty much your typical post-apocalyptic setting. A virus outbreak turns people into run-of-the-mill zombies, and society crumbles. While this setup provides a solid foundation for any zombie story, it doesn't bring much new or unique to the table. People crave something special. They want mushroom zombies, parkour, towering monstrosities, and living plants fighting armored zombies on vehicles. Okay, maybe not the last one, but you get the idea. In Days Gone, there is nothing quite like that. You're just a guy, Deacon St. John, a former biker gang member trying to survive in a world overrun by the undead. Zombies?
The freaks?
It's freakers.
Okay, freakers feel pretty generic. They are predictable, very dumb, move at human speeds, don't see or hear well, hibernate during the day and hunt at night, exhibiting standard zombie behaviors without much innovation. The one real twist is their tendency to clump together into massive swarms, which can be both terrifying and exhilarating. It's a neat trick, but not a total game changer. I guess all this is one of the reasons people overlooked this game. At first glance, Days Gone appears very shallow, with nothing unique to catch the eye, especially since the early hours are indeed slow and the world takes time to reveal its depths. But if you give it a chance, I believe it will surprise you. What unexpectedly elevates Days Gone for me is its exploration of post-apocalyptic humans. Days Gone's human landscape is as fractured as the broken world itself. It's fascinating to see how regular people cope with the apocalypse. There are drifters like our main hero, survivors who exist outside societal structures, always on the move and not a permanent part of any camp. As a drifter, you travel and interact with all these different groups. Each camp has its own story and its own way of dealing with the new world. This journey becomes a window into the diverse ways people try to survive and rebuild after the fall.
I'll do whatever it takes.
Someone creates a cult full of crazy people using narcotics, cutting themselves and worshipping zombies by behaving like them.
The freaks?
Others set up a labor camp that restricts the freedom of people inside, operating on the rule: if you want to eat, you need to work.
You! Get your ass back to work. Don't make me go get Cyrus.
This camp is essentially a slave encampment.
They won't let me leave.
But people have little choice, since the alternative is to live in the wilderness, where they would likely be eaten by zombies or killed by bandits. A glimmer of hope exists in a camp striving for a democracy. Equality, cooperation and fairness are their core values. They establish laws, seek peaceful coexistence with other camps, and believe in resolving conflict without resorting to violence. But will it actually work in a world like this? In stark contrast, others form a full-scale military force with ranks, uniforms, and a war-centric ideology. They believe the only way to survive is to wage war against zombies.
Freaks.
by amassing weapons, machines and explosives to kill, burn and bomb the freakers, they hope to secure a future. Beyond these large-scale societal structures, there are plenty of personal stories about coping with tragedy. Some try to forget everything and live peacefully, even building new relationships. Some become obsessed with trauma and death, driving themselves to madness.
I learned that too. That's why we need to be just like them.
While not all of these stories are incredibly deep or fully developed, they carry emotional weight and offer interesting insights into how people manage to live in such a harsh world. I'll delve into these stories a bit more later. Before moving on, I want to talk about one glaring inconsistency that kept nagging at me. Everyone rides a motorcycle. It makes sense for Deacon, a former biker, but why is everyone else a biker too? This is a way more dangerous and less efficient way of transportation than cars. The game kind of explains this by implying that the roads are too blocked to navigate, so you need something maneuverable. But it's not like they couldn't be cleared. Besides, at some point we see people manage to ride full convoys of cars and even trucks. This is likely just a gameplay limitation, as the developers didn't want to code cars into the game. But it's fun to imagine that for some reason everyone in this version of Oregon is such an avid biker that they stick to motorcycles even in the post-apocalypse, just because they love them so much. It may seem odd, because it's not what people typically know this game for or expect from it. But for me, Immersion became one of the most defining and noticeable aspects of the whole game. Days Gone pulls you into its desolate world in ways that are both subtle and striking. The atmosphere in Days Gone is undeniably immersive. The game does a fantastic job of portraying a bleak, desolate world. The United States Pacific Northwest setting is beautifully rendered, with dynamic weather, changing seasons, and a day-night cycle that affects gameplay. As you ride through the decayed remnants of civilization, you can feel the weight of the apocalypse. Abandoned towns, overgrown highways, and makeshift survivor camps all contribute to the sense of a world that has moved on from its human inhabitants. Days Gone succeeds in creating a world that feels alive and dangerous. The sound design complements this perfectly, with the eerie noises of freakers in the distance, the growl of Deacon's motorcycle, and the ambient sounds of the wilderness. The sense of isolation as you navigate the world is palpable. One of the strongest aspects of Immersion in Days Gone for me was its characters, particularly the way they sound.
You are writing checks with other men's blood!
The people you meet in this world don't feel like actors playing a role. They feel like real survivors of a post-apocalypse. Their mannerisms, way of talking, and behavior all contribute to a sense of realism.
Come on, I'm gonna tell you about Lost Lake. It has the clearest water you have ever seen, and the fish, oh my God. The fish in the morning, they jump this high. I'll show you. When we go, we're gonna have such a good time. Make sure you hold on tight, okay? Ready?
They sound very troubled and constantly on edge, often talking under their breaths or mumbling.
Sure, Mike. Whatever you say, I'm on board.
Deacon St. John is a standout in this regard.
Nests. I gotta clear them out. I gotta make it safer to ride through here.
I've seen people say his voice acting sounds weird and unnatural. And yeah, he is weird. He sounds unhinged.
They look pretty broken to me, Cope, but hey, whatever you say. There's nothing wrong with a little crass commercialism. Hell, I could use a new bike right about now.
But that's exactly as you'd expect a rough biker who lost the love of his life and has killed zombies and people daily for 2 years straight to sound.
Well then let me enlighten you. I spent the last 2 years killing freaks. One by one, up close, so close that I could smell the flesh rotting between their teeth. So
His mental health is clearly shattered, and it's evident in every word he says.
Jesus Christ, Mike, do you have any idea what the fuck you've done?
Yeah.
I believe this portrayal makes him more relatable and grounded, making it easier to connect with Deacon as a character. The way the game handles zombie swarms, freaker swarms, also deserves a mention. Encountering a horde is a genuinely terrifying experience that forces you to think on your feet. The sight of hundreds of zombies
Goddamn freaks.
moving as one entity is both impressive and frightening, creating some of the game's most memorable moments.
Oh shit, freak!
You know what? No more freakers. Listen, it's a dumb name. I don't get why people try to avoid the word zombie when creating zombie apocalypse stories, especially when their zombies are not even that unique. You are not being clever or coy, this just feels uninspired.
The freak show.
The freaks!
A freak.
freaks,
The freak show.
freaks,
Freaks. The freaks.
freaks,
Freak.
it's freakers,
The freak show.
Freaks. The freaks. Freaks.
freak show and shit.
The freaker.
The freaks are
Freak!
And if you do decide to go that route, then at least come up with something truly interesting. Freaks, isn't it?
Out freak the freaks.
Although Days Gone is set during a zombie apocalypse, it doesn't seem to aim to be a horror game. While there are certainly spooky moments and an atmosphere of unease, the game avoids the typical horror elements. No jump scares and almost no excessively dark environments. Nights are bright enough to navigate, and while infected are a threat, they aren't designed to be terrifying in the way traditional zombies often are. I believe this approach kind of enhances immersion. It's easier to stay engaged with the game world when you're not constantly on edge. This allows for a deeper connection to the story and characters, as you're not constantly distracted by the need to change the underwear. Do you know what unexpectedly adds immensely to all this immersion? The difficulty setting. I think this is also one of the reasons this game did not get the recognition it deserves, as most people won't even consider playing on the hardest difficulty. I can't blame them. In many games, higher difficulty levels are uninspiringly hard, turning the game into a grindfest and turning enemies into damage sponges. Yes, I'm looking at you, Horizon Zero Dawn. And you too, Grounded, don't think I forgot you. But I can assure you that playing Days Gone on survival makes the game much more engaging and immersive without making it too difficult. It's one of the few games that manages to get difficulty right. You see, the game does not descend to cheap tricks, like mindlessly increasing enemy HP through the roof or making them one-shot you. Regular enemies still die from one good headshot, while tougher foes, like bears, will actually require strategic use of your arsenal. The main change in survival difficulty is the removal of most HUD elements. Gone are the minimap, weapon UI and health and stamina bars. The only thing that remains is the waypoint, and that's it. You can still access all the HUD elements by pressing the survival vision button, but they appear for roughly 5 seconds and disappear again. The survival vision itself is also nerfed. On lower difficulties, it's basically a free cheat that highlights all interactable objects and even enemies through walls. Nope, nothing like that on survival. Of course, this is a matter of preference, but I don't think you need any of that to enjoy the game. On the contrary, it makes it much more immersive to play without it. When you actually have to scour the area and look around for supplies, instead of pressing a button to highlight everything, it really changes how you approach the game. This forces you to truly explore environments. It's even more impactful with enemies. When they can surprise you by sneaking up behind you, it's a lot more intense, rather than when you can magically see them outlined through walls. The one HUD element that feels missed at times is the minimap. Navigating the vast open world without it can be challenging, especially when you're off the road in the middle of the forest. Getting lost is a real possibility. While the first few hours were a struggle, I quickly adapted and never looked back. Learning to rely on landmarks, the environment and your in-game knowledge becomes very rewarding. This stripped-down approach may not be for everyone, but it encourages a deeper connection with the world, and there's this sense of accomplishment when you successfully navigate by yourself. Besides all that, survival mode also turns off fast travel. From the sound of it, no fast travel seems like a significant problem, but in this game it's actually quite nice, considering how important your bike and riding it are to the core of the game. The fuel management, the constant encounters on the road, and the fact that the world isn't that big makes it more immersive rather than frustrating or annoying. But it's still a double-edged sword. On one hand, restricting fast travel can feel like a time waste, especially once you've discovered the most interesting points along the road. On the other hand, it is pretty engaging and immersive. Riding in Days Gone is fun, and even familiar roads can be enjoyable as you start recognizing landmarks and remembering spots to stop for a nap.
I'm just gonna grab some shut-eye.
You discover hidden nooks and crannies, appreciate the scenery on repeat journeys. The world becomes less like a game map and more like a home. But no matter how immersive and fun it is, because the game is very long, it will, without a doubt, become repetitive. At one point in the game, there's a section with a vast, frequently traversed stretch of map that can become tedious, pushing the boundaries of even the most patient players. I'll be honest, at that point, I started cheating. On PC, you can install a mod that allows a lot of things, basically DevTools. Sometimes, when the road seemed way too tedious, I used it for fast travel. I thought, guess it's just too hard to design a game that avoids repetitiveness entirely. Then story development happened and it introduced a new location that completely revitalized the experience. Suddenly, the tedium of backtracking faded away, replaced by a fresh and engaging environment. In the end, I totally forgot that I had ever cheated or had any problems without fast travel. I enjoyed riding through the map immensely. Ultimately, playing on survival was absolutely the right choice. While a lower difficulty might have offered a smoother ride, it wouldn't have fostered the same level of immersion and connection with the world. The limitation of repetitive travel was a small price to pay for such a richly rewarding experience. It is time to finally talk about the gameplay. Immersion and world building are essential, but the heart of the experience lies in the gameplay itself. Days Gone delivers a mixed bag in this regard, offering moments of genuine thrill and excitement, tempered by some noticeable flaws. One standout gameplay element that I've already mentioned more than once is a motorcycle. Deacon is a biker, so riding around on a bike is central to the game and heavily featured in advertising. So, how is it? Well, it's good enough. The bike handles well, with satisfying drifting mechanics and the occasional thrill of jumping off ramps. It's not revolutionary, but it's solid and fun. Although, at first, the bike is not great. It's slow, breaks down easily and constantly needs refueling. This is where the game's upgrade system comes into play. As you progress, you can enhance both functionality and aesthetics, making your bike feel like a steadily evolving companion. This is a terrific concept. It's just a pity there's not as much variety as one would hope. The only thing that offers a lot of variety is paint drops, but other parts, not so much. Of course, a vital part of any third-person shooter is, well, the shooting and the enemies. Both are again good but not exceptional. Human enemies are pretty much what you'd expect from any similar game. However, I need to commend the variety. There are a bunch of different enemy types, ranging from the regular and expected, like snipers or helmeted enemies, to more unique types, like armored humans with flamethrowers, or crazy dudes that set themselves ablaze and run at you looking for a hug. It's not a very deep system, and it is balanced by the fact that enemy AI is pretty much non-existent. They don't employ any tactics, communications or strategies, always simply running at you and shooting. In general, this means that the combat gameplay is rather fun and doesn't get stale thanks to the variety. But at the same time, it's not something too special. The same goes for zombies. They also offer a good variety, including infected animals like zombie dogs and bears. I particularly like the design of newts. These are infected human kids. Yes, it's pretty brutal. They are not notably aggressive and usually just run from you, using roofs and other high places as their safe space. They follow your footsteps as they try to assess if you are dangerous or not. They are very territorial and will attack you if you get too close or start taking their stuff. This type of enemy that exhibits more complex behaviors than just mindlessly attacking on sight creates a unique and immersive dynamic. But the true stars of the show are the swarmers. Individually, they are boring enemies that pose very little challenge, but as their name suggests, they form swarms. A dozen of them are already a lot more dangerous and fun to deal with. But what about a few dozen? What about 100? These are called hordes, and they are one of the most compelling features of the game. These encounters are where Days Gone truly shines. On lower difficulties, they may not be that dangerous, and you can start dealing with them early on. But on survival, this was out of the question. The few times I've tried, I ended up running with my tail between my legs, left with neither health nor ammo. This adds so much to the immersion. When dozens of angry zombies run at you while you're trying to kite them around, you strategically place traps and actively use the environment. These heart-pounding moments compare to nothing else. Dealing with the enemies means using weapons, of course. Melee weapons are useful and valuable at first. Then you get guns, grenades and such, so melee weapons become less effective, especially against tough zombies or swarms due to their rather low damage. However, closer to the end of the game, you can find a fully maxed out melee weapon that one-shots swarmers. The problem for me was how you get it. You don't need to craft it, beat a boss or finish a quest chain. You simply find the best melee weapon on the ground. This makes all other melee weapons in the game obsolete the moment you find this one. I'm not sure I like this design very much. Guns are quite fun, and there are plenty to choose from. I enjoyed the shooting mechanics. The addition of the focus ability makes it even more enjoyable to land precise headshots. But I have issues with the balance and progression of the system. Later, more expensive and harder to get weapons don't necessarily mean they are better. Often they have low damage, poor accuracy and limited ammo capacity, making them feel underwhelming. One of the first guns you unlock is actually really strong, precise and has a lot of ammo, so you can clear most of the game by using just it. I would say that most weapons are pretty poorly balanced. I don't mind having situational guns, or the ones that are subjective. Some people will like them, while others won't. But playing for hours to unlock a new gun, only to find it objectively worse than the previous one, is not fun. Open world activities follow the trend of being nothing outstanding, but enjoyable enough. There are zombie nests to burn, bandit camps to clear, Nero research sites to loot, and hordes to kill. The best part for me is that these activities are well distributed. There's just enough variety to keep things engaging without becoming a chore. The game also includes smaller tasks, like collecting tourist brochures and visiting points of interest. As I understand, these places are based on real-life locations in Oregon, which is nice to have and adds to the world building. Besides that, every survivor camp offers a number of side quests for you to accomplish, and there's a noticeable drop in quality compared to the main story. The side quests feature minimal dialogue, no cutscenes, and repetitive, uninspired tasks. For people invested in the world and characters, these missions can still provide something of interest. However, they definitely could have benefited from a more engaging design. The bigger problem is that some main story missions feel indistinguishable from these optional side quests. There are plenty where you're simply asked to kill someone, bring supplies, or clear zombies. This wasn't a problem for me, as I completed every single quest in the game regardless. But I still don't understand why they made a decision to bloat the plot like this. The obvious answer is to pad the playtime, but the main story alone, without any side quests, takes around 36 hours on average. So there is simply no need to pad the playtime like that. If the main story was 30 hours instead of 36, it would still be more than fine. As it stands, the main story feels bloated in places, with some quests existing purely to extend playtime rather than add meaningful content. For me, it seems obvious that a tighter main story focused on impactful moments would elevate the overall pacing. Days Gone is a game brimming with potential. The core gameplay loop, particularly when facing down zombie hordes, is genuinely enjoyable. The world itself feels lived in, and the motorcycle serves as a trusty companion in navigating it. It delivers moments of genuine excitement and thrill, yet some elements very much hold the experience back. A few small changes, a few polishing touches, and it could have been so much better. Maybe the developers didn't have enough time to implement everything planned, or perhaps the budget ran out. Whatever the reason, it feels like a bit more work could have made the gameplay near perfect. At first glance, the story of Days Gone might seem like a tired trope. Yet another tale of random survivors in a zombie apocalypse. We've seen and heard these stories dozens of times. But if you dig a little deeper, you'll discover that beneath the surface lies a surprisingly nuanced exploration. The narrative delves into intriguing themes like loss, survival, loyalty, and redemption, offering more than a typical post-apocalyptic plot. I particularly enjoyed that, unlike many similar stories, Days Gone doesn't center on a world-saving hero or someone directly connected to the outbreak. Instead, it focuses on Deacon St. John, an ordinary man grappling with a new and dangerous world. The narrative focuses on the aftermath, the trauma, the loss, the struggle to survive, and how different people cope with these challenges. With Deacon at the forefront, searching for his place in this harsh reality. The story starts at the outbreak's very beginning. We witness Deacon, his wife Sarah, and his best friend Boozer trying to flee to safety on the first day of the chaos. Both Sarah and Boozer are wounded. A chopper arrives to evacuate people to a refugee camp, but there's only room for two. Faced with leaving someone behind, Deacon makes a heart-wrenching choice. He decides to save his wife and stay with Boozer, hoping to increase their chances of survival and follow the chopper to safety from the ground.
What did you do?
2 years after a global pandemic ravaged the world, we find Deacon and Boozer as hardened drifters in the Pacific Northwest. They travel the land, taking on odd jobs for supplies. Recently, they've heard of better opportunities in the north, so they plan to leave Oregon and head that way, hoping for a better life.
So tomorrow, get the drugs, take him to Tucker, collect all Leon's bounty. Then I say we head north.
Before they can leave, their plans are derailed when Boozer is brutally injured by a pair of psychos. This incident forces them to delay their journey while Boozer heals. During this time, we learn what happened to Deacon's wife, Sarah. The refugee camp she was taken to was overrun by the infected within hours. Although everything points to Sarah being gone, Deacon holds onto a sliver of hope as her body was never found. His hope is further fueled when he starts seeing Nero research choppers still flying around. That's it. That's all we get. What's the virus? How do these zombies function? Even how do you become a zombie? All these questions are a mystery, and most of them will remain unanswered throughout the entire game.
There's a reason they never completed any of this expansion work.
The first major storyline focuses on Boozer. As time goes on, his injury worsens, making it clear that Deacon can't handle it alone. He needs proper medicine, ideally a doctor, things that are nearly impossible to find in the middle of the apocalypse. This storyline is intriguing because it highlights an aspect that games rarely explore at this level: true male friendship. Deacon and Boozer are hardened bikers and overall tough guys, the kind who wouldn't be caught dead opening up emotionally. But beneath that gruff exterior, there's a genuine care for each other. Boozer's injury sets off a chain of events. Deacon's loyalty and determination are put to the test as he tries everything to help his friend. The bond is evident as they repeatedly show they would literally die for one another.
Okay. So this is it? This is how we're going out? No, I don't think so.
But despite this deep bond, they still struggle to open up to each other, constrained by the pressures of toxic masculinity. Regardless of the lack of dramatic speeches, actions speak louder than words, making their interactions some of the game's most touching moments.
Give him hell, brother.
Yeah, here goes.
Chuck would be proud.
Boozer's personal arc is equally compelling, as it explores themes of severe injury, disability, and the accompanying mental struggles. Due to his injury, Boozer feels useless and believes there is no place for him in the world anymore, especially since he can't even ride a bike, an essential part of his whole identity.
That's the one thing I miss. Riding on the open road.
He grapples with severe depression, and struggles to find the reason to keep going. But over time, with the support of Deacon and other survivors, Boozer learns to accept his new self. This journey from despair to finding a new purpose adds a powerful and emotional layer to the overall narrative. The second main plotline revolves around Sarah and the theme of accepting the loss of a loved one. Despite all evidence pointing to Sarah's death, Deacon just can't accept it. He can't believe that the one dearest to him is gone until he is 100% sure. He comes time and time again to her grave, talking to her if she is still there.
Should have been there when your camp was overrun. I should have been there for that too. So...
He reminisces about how they met, their dates, and his proposal. He even returns to the church where they got married, setting it on fire, hoping to finally let her go. Yet nothing works. He still feels her presence.
You rest easy, okay? I'll be back to check on you, and I know, yeah, you wouldn't want me to, but I guess Boozer's right. I can't help myself. It's like I said, I'll be back.
He also grapples with the agonizing uncertainty. Even if Sarah is alive, the past 2 hellish years could have irrevocably changed her. She may not be the same person he once loved, as he has certainly changed himself.
Mike, that's what I've been living with. And now you're chasing ghosts. You think finding your old lady, if she's alive, you think that's gonna fix it? Make you whole? I don't know, but I gotta try.
This deeply personal story explores the complexities of the desperate search for closure. It delves into the profound grief of losing a loved one, exposing Deacon's vulnerability and the immense impact their relationship had on his life, making his struggle all the more relatable.
I love you.
Another major storyline that unfolds throughout the game is what I would call other survivors. I've grouped them together because they collectively explore the moral dilemmas of a post-apocalyptic world. What should you do about strangers? Do you help them even if it means putting yourself in danger? Or do you prioritize only yourself and your close ones? How do you decide which people are worth helping and which are not? These questions are tough, and Deacon is clearly conflicted with them. Initially, he is an extreme isolationist and only cares about Boozer and himself. He's not a villain, he doesn't rob or harm civilians, but he views other humans as tools for survival. He helps nearby camps because it pays, not because he wants to assist them. If there's no benefit to him, he likely won't do it. Self-preservation above all else. Nevertheless, you delve deeper into the camp's local politics, the past of these people, their hopes for the future, and their plans to backstab one another. Through this, Deacon's isolationist facade gradually cracks, revealing a growing empathy for those around him, even though he really tries to bury those feelings. In fact, he is so afraid of appearing vulnerable that he often avoids human interactions altogether, embodying the strong, silent man stereotype. As the story progresses, Deacon's character development shines through his interactions with other survivors. He gradually becomes more empathetic and willing to help others, even when there's no immediate benefit to him. We see Deacon's humane side most clearly in the storyline about Lisa. Lisa is a young girl, around 17 years old, whom Deacon finds surviving alone in the abandoned town. Her character represents the innocents lost in the apocalypse, and her arc is one of the most heartbreaking in the game. Traumatized by the last 2 years, Lisa is stressed and scared. In his own awkward way, he tries to support her.
It's alright, it's okay, it's okay.
He delivers her to a nearby survivor camp, hoping she might find a place for herself there. When he learns that Lisa is miserable in the camp, he tries to cheer her up with a gift.
It's not safe.
I gotta turn in. They make us get up really early for work.
When she gets kidnapped, he hurries to save her, later taking her to another camp in hopes she will be happier there. Lisa is a stranger to him, yet Deacon genuinely wants to help her to have a life in this world, even if he doesn't know how to make that happen. He struggles to understand her feelings and how to truly help her, but his efforts, however awkward, are heartfelt.
So come on. Fine, don't come with me, but you can't stay here. You have to run because they will kill you. Do you understand me? Go!
This relationship is a beautiful touch to the story, showing that not all interactions need to be perfect or lead to a happy ending. Deacon's failure to build a strong bond with Lisa and help her live peacefully adds depth to the narrative, highlighting the complexity of human connections. Deacon's journey towards a more empathetic outlook continues when he comes to the Lost Lake camp, seeking help for the boozer's injury. At first, he maintains the facade of a strong, silent man who doesn't need anyone's help. He makes it clear that he is there only for Boozer and that they'll leave as soon as he recovers.
Oh, now, wait a minute. I just need a few days and some antibiotics.
He claims that he assists the camp solely because they are helping Boozer in return. But this is clearly a lie. Deacon seems to enjoy being around people, helping them and seeing their gratitude. He doesn't do it just as a courtesy for them helping Boozer. He genuinely likes it. Deacon is such a sweetheart. Or is he? No, not at all. Although I've just talked about how much Deacon likes to help people and how there's a good person somewhere inside him, at the same time, somewhere, maybe not even as deep as that, there is a ruthless monster. Deacon is not a hero who saves everyone for a noble cause. Not even close.
All the way down there. What do you suppose that feels like? Huh? Torn apart? Keep alive?
Guess he's gonna find out. Fuck you.
Goodbye, Leon.
Deacon is a human, and like any human, he is flawed. Probably more so than the average person, even by the zombie apocalypse standards. He kills, and he kills a lot. Not just zombies, but people too. And it's not always a matter of necessity. He clearly enjoys it, taking satisfaction in cleaning the world from trash.
I gotta clear the camp. Bunch of murderers and thieves, and I can't let any of them escape. Goddamn rippers. I am going to kill all of you.
When Deacon is in a pinch, he doesn't hesitate to exploit others for his own gain. When he needs medicine, his first instinct isn't to ask for help, but to sneak into a peaceful camp and steal it from them, leaving ill people to die. And it's not like the zombie apocalypse made him this way. From what we can see, he was already like this, at least partly. Boozer is very similar. He doesn't seem like a much better person than Deacon.
Fucking low-life piece of shit scumbag who got what was coming to him. Alright. Now you fucking go up there and kill that son of a bitch.
After all, they were part of a biker gang, and gangs aren't usually composed of law-abiding, good-natured people. This is mostly evident in the fact that one of the main villains of the game was largely created by Deacon's and Boozer's actions. Jesse was part of their biker gang, where he was pushed around and bullied. After he killed one of his fellow bikers, the gang decided to kick him out. Seems logical. But to do this, they forcibly held him down and used a blowtorch to burn off his tattoos. Deacon and Boozer were the ones who did that. This traumatic experience deeply affected Jesse. After the outbreak, he formed a cult that worships zombies and tries to be just like them. He managed to gain a massive following of what seems to be hundreds of people. Jesse seeks revenge and uses his cult to hunt down both of our heroes and everyone close to them. Is he a villain? Of course. Is this a messed up situation? Absolutely. But it's hard to deny that the creation of the fanatical cult led by Jesse is a direct consequence of Deacon and Boozer's past actions. They created this monster by being monsters themselves.
Tuck's gonna need something for the bounty.
After Jesse makes his first moves by injuring both Deacon and Boozer, what do? They steal valuable dynamite from their allies, sneak into the enemy territory and blow up at them, creating a flood that likely kills dozens, if not hundreds of people, some of whom were surely innocent. All this cements the fact that Deacon is not a hero. He is a vengeful man, willing to kill hundreds to reach his goals. He risks not only his own life, but the lives of his friends and everyone in the camp by practically declaring all-out war on the cult. He doesn't consider the consequences of his actions or how they will affect others. He is solely focused on his own goal, revenge.
When Carlos finds out about this, there's gonna be the devil to pay. Carlos can go fuck himself! You are writing checks with other men's blood! I hope you're good with that.
Deacon St. John is the heart and soul of Days Gone, and is a multi-layered, complex character defined by contradictions. His capacity for both compassion and brutality makes him profoundly human. On the one hand, we see him grow, helping people, worrying about those close to him, and being ready to sacrifice himself for Boozer. On the other hand, he is a vengeful monster who values his goals above human lives, willing to kill hundreds to achieve his twisted objectives.
You may not like it, but the world is what it is. Yeah, it is. Praying ain't gonna change that. Wishing that it was something else ain't gonna make it that way, Mike.
Do you see what I meant? This seemingly simple game with a generic premise and straightforward characters is actually much more than that. It offers a rich narrative experience full of details that add up to a sophisticated story with complex, three-dimensional characters interconnected with one another. Following these characters and learning more about them and their world is truly gripping. I'm not saying it's an award-worthy storyline that topples all others, not even close, but it is a lot better than I expected from this game and from the zombie apocalypse genre overall. It shows that even in a world filled with zombies, the most dangerous and fascinating creatures are still the humans themselves. In today's gaming world, there's this notion that if a game isn't a perfect 10 out of 10, then it's basically trash. I just can't agree with that. This mentality overlooks the value of solid, enjoyable experiences that don't necessarily redefine the genre. Not every game needs to be a mind-blowing masterpiece that sticks with you forever. Days Gone is a prime example of such a game. It may not be a masterpiece, but it offers a solid and fun experience that deserves way more recognition than it has received. The story is a lot better than I expected, focusing on Deacon St. John's journey through grief and his quest to find meaning in a broken world. The immersion is unexpectedly on point, and the character design and development, along with excellent voice acting, especially from Sam Witwer as Deacon, really bring the game to life. Sure, some supporting characters could have been fleshed out more, and there are some pacing issues, as well as the gameplay, although pretty good, has a lot of room for improvement. But the game still hits hard and stays with you. One of the biggest missed opportunities is the potential for a sequel. Days Gone ends with a perfect hook, leaving players wanting more. Despite a huge petition with over 200,000 signatures from fans, a sequel seems unlikely. The game never got the traction it needed, and 5 years later, there's no sign of a follow-up. It's a real shame, as many of the game's shortcomings could have easily been addressed in a sequel, potentially taking it to the next level. Days Gone might not have the flashiest concept, but it nails delivering a grounded, suspenseful, and rewarding zombie experience. It is a game you can dive into for a few hours, ride around, kill zombies, and do jobs for the camps without feeling any pressure. In a market full of games trying to be the next big thing, Days Gone stands out by just being good. And sometimes that's exactly what we need.
The biker boys, most badass drifters on the broken road.
I wanna tell you just what you meant to me before you lost your mind. And things never seem to change, but they still are not the same as they were yesterday.
And I know what kind of man he is, what he's done. He done any worse than you? Ricky? How about me? We've all been out in this shit, Skizzo. We've all done things we're not proud of.
Babe, I should've caught him yesterday. Should've caught him yesterday. Should've caught him yesterday. Oh, yesterday. I wish you could see just what you do to me. Why don't you speak no more? I'll tell you how it goes when nobody really knows just who you are today. And I just wanna go home, a place that I don't know, where I can waste away.
Where's your old lady, Deke?
She's dead, Boozer. Sarah's dead.
Yeah, and she's been dead a long time, so don't you think that you mourned her long enough?
Baby, should've caught him yesterday. Should've caught him yesterday.
This ring is a symbol of my love. And it is precious. It has no beginning and no end. I love you.
We've reached the end, and it looks like you made it through the whole video. I hope you enjoyed the retrospective. If you did, please be a chocolate chip cookie. Like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. Your support really means a lot. You might also enjoy some of my other content, like my deep dive into little known wonder, Griftlands, or my shorter review of the planet Crafter. Have a good one and hope to see you in the next one.